Welcome to climate.edu. So here's the thing. If tomorrow the world collectively came to its senses and decided unequivocally to immediately end the use of fossil fuels, the reality is that we have nowhere near the capacity to fully transition to renewable energy. Decarbonizing requires, among other things, building millions of solar panels, wind turbines, EVs, batteries, EV chargers, transitioning to new green construction techniques, exponentially expanding transmission infrastructure to meet the surge in demand. And this means we need people, not AI, but people, skilled workers to build these things. And we just don't have these workers, even for our less ambitious decarbonization efforts. In fact, according to a 2022 report from the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance, lack of skilled workers is one of the top barriers to clean energy growth. A report of the House Select Committee on Economic Disparity and Fairness and Growth had a similar conclusion. Despite hundreds of billions of dollars of investment flowing into clean energy following the passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, clean energy as an in-demand occupation is suffering from lack of workers. Put simply, we can't meet our climate goals without building, as fast as we can, a robust, diverse pipeline of well-trained workers. Unfortunately, here in the U.S., there is no real workforce education and training system per se. Short-term programs, apprenticeships, and non-credit credentials are delivered by a patchwork of community-based organizations, for-profit training providers, industry associations, unions, and yes, community and technical colleges. And the models and funding streams differ region to region and state by state. One reason we lack the clean energy workers we need just might be this fragmented, piecemeal workforce system, which is confusing and difficult to navigate. One organization that is trying to address this is the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, or IREC. IREC wants to make it easy for anyone who wants to move into a clean energy job. Here to talk about how is Dr. Cynthia Finley, IREC's Vice President of Workforce Programs. We discuss the incredible demand for clean energy jobs, the urgent need to train skilled workers to fill these jobs, the essential role colleges play in the U.S. workforce pipeline, and how IREC is leading the way in building a clean energy workforce here in the U.S. Dr. Cynthia Finley, welcome to climate.edu. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
As I was reading about the organization that you work for and that we're going to talk about today, the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, you guys do a whole lot. There's a whole lot of work going on, which we're gonna get into. But it's surprising that you have any free time to give. So I do. I know it's valuable to you, and so really thank you for being here and being here to talk about. I think an area of, in this case, higher education or workforce education, kind of broadly education, which is the focus of this show. Important. It's an important piece of kind of addressing climate change and building, as you call it at IREC, the clean energy workforce. And so I'm really happy to learn more myself and to really kind of share some of the work that you do and the importance of this work. So again, thank you for your time. So I've only heard of IREC kind of recently as I've gotten interested in climate change and renewable energy, but you guys have been around for decades, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the history of IREC and what the organization does?
We have, and for those who don't know, because we love acronyms, IREC stands for Interstate Renewable Energy Council. We've been around for over 40 years. Working to make clean energy possible for millions of Americans. We do that through our programs to link people to cutting edge solutions to help advance renewable energy, electric grid modernization, and energy efficiency. IREC has 3 really strong programs that we think align nicely with our goals, which really are to build the foundation for the rapid adoption of clean energy and energy efficiency to benefit our people, the economy, and our planet. And we really vision a 100% clean energy future that is reliable, resilient, and also equitable. So building on that foundation, we have programs in the regulatory space. We do regulatory engagement. We have interconnection programs connecting to the grid, modernizing the grid, smart inverters, energy storage, hosting capacity, electric vehicles, shared renewables. Those things all fall in that space. We've got really strong foothold in communities across the country, helping communities, local communities find clean energy solutions, prepare for those clean energy solutions. That includes things like permitting and inspection solutions, really trying to remove some of those blockades for communities that would prevent the rapid adoption of clean energy. And we've got a great program in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean as well, working with a lot of underrepresented communities in that way to help bring equity to the clean energy space. And then we're building a workforce to do that. All of those things I just mentioned need people to help accomplish it. And this division, which I work in, we have developed workforce strategies. We look at job market trends, clean energy apprenticeships, clean energy training, workforce diversity and inclusion. And we're really focused on underrepresented communities, minorities, veterans. We've got some great veteran programs. And then it's all sort of connected with that nucleus of quality. And we have a credentialing and standards program as well to make sure that we're really connected to quality education and training. And so those are sort of the three pillars of IREC, and we're working to advance that rapid adoption of clean energy.
Having been around for so many years, has the work changed with the recent focus on policies regarding clean energy, the green economy and green workforce development, the passage of bills like the Inflation Reduction Act? Have you pretty much steadily, just been doing the same thing, and the world is catching up to IREC, or has your focus shifted at all with kind of the recent, the urgency of things, as well as the response to that through kind of federal policy and state policies?
Yeah, we've definitely seen in recent years, and certainly with the passage of legislation and the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bills and all of the funding that's available now through the federal programs, we've definitely seen a sense of urgency and a push. We're recognizing now that we need to reach climate goals in a very short period of time. And I think that trend will continue and has continued. But this is a gigantic move with many, many parts. And I liken it to turning the Titanic around in a river, right? It's going to take quite a bit of time to actually make some headway. And what we're seeing is people noticing that there are many pieces to this puzzle and that we need to work together to leverage those resources. So the resources are there. Everybody is wanting to be on board, but how do we connect those dots and work with these pieces and leverage the resources that are out there from this federal funding and these new policies and regulatory issues? How do we really connect those pieces? And it looks different in every state, which is also something that I talk a lot about. It's not a one-size-fits-all sort of approach, certainly not to workforce and education and training. And the needs are different. The way the employers approach the work can be different from state to state. And the technology and the occupations can be so vastly different or categorized differently in each state. And we want to make it easy for people to find access to this education and training and access to the jobs that are there. And part of that comes from standardizing some of the things, the language that we use, making sure that we've got pathways for folks to navigate, not only just get a job, but have a career in this industry so we can build some sustainability from a marketplace. We've seen clean energy ebb and flow over the decades. I know, back solar is not new, right? And, we see it ebb and flow, and we see it take off, and then we'll have setbacks. And there are multiple reasons for that. But if we can create a workforce pipeline that it can meet the demand of these industries and create some sustainability with small contractors and really diversify the workforce, I think we'll have a better chance to leverage all of the resources that are out there. And IREC, specifically in workforce development, we're working to really be the facilitator and the connective tissue to help localities and programs and employers get the resources they need and create that model of sustainability.
Right. So I definitely want to touch upon that point about this need for I guess, systematizing some of this disparate state, the differences among states and regions and things like that. But let's first talk a little bit about some of the ways that IREC is kind of addressing this with your organization. You did touch upon the program that you oversee at IREC, which is the workforce program at IREC. Can you tell us kind of what is the core areas of work for the workforce program? How are you dealing with this, building the clean energy workforce with the program that you oversee?
We've recently launched our workforce strategy, which is called Green Workforce Connect. And we're working to connect what we really view are three of the primary issues in workforce, and that's bringing awareness to clean energy jobs. There might be a lack of awareness in some communities about what these jobs are. People are not familiar. They've not heard the terminology. They may not know anyone who has a solar panel on their house. They may not know that weatherization jobs fall under construction, and they also fall under solar, and they fall under a lot of different places. And they may not know what those terms are or even know what those jobs entail. So I might not know what an energy auditor does or what that looks like or how much it makes. And so we really want to bring an awareness to communities about what these jobs are, what a career looks like. IREC has fantastic career maps that are interactive and let you really see that if you start in one place, what your trajectory could be and what your career could be. And that mapping is just the beginning to bring that awareness to those communities about what's available. The next step is, what do they do next? Where do they go? How do they get that training? Or how do they connect with that employer who even has that job? And those are a lot of loopholes there if you're a job seeker coming in or transitioning from another industry, maybe fossil fuels, or maybe you're just interested in getting into clean energy, but you don't know where to start. We want to make sure that they're connected to quality education and training. And this platform and this strategy will work with intentional partners in each state to make sure that we're connecting to the quality training that meets the standard of the industry. So that sector strategy approach is going to be really important to make sure that folks are getting the training that the employers actually need. But then we work that process in reverse too, making sure that employers have resources they need to connect to training, to make sure that it's designed to meet their needs, that the timing meets the needs of the jobs that they have, but also resources to begin apprenticeships in states where they might not have thought about doing that before as a resource to gain, their workforce, but also how to modernize the workforce with DEIA efforts, right? The generation of workers that are coming in or younger have different expectations of work. They have, different skill sets. How do we mash the two together and make sure that our employers are really meeting the needs of the employees, but that we're also making sure the employees have the right training to meet the needs of the employers? And so we want to provide those resources and tools for contractors, for employers, as well as job seekers, connecting them to the resources in their community as well to make sure that they can get through this pipeline with supportive services or some upskilling that they might need to get started. So that's the 30,000-foot view of Green Workforce Connect. And we are working now to build it out. We have a pilot in weatherization occupations in 3 states where we are working to do just this and connect those job seekers to those training providers and those employers. But it will really be important to make sure that this is built out to meet the needs of the states that we're in. So we'll be working to advance this in other states and then include other technologies like connecting to the grid or EVs or solar or whatever the jobs might be in that state to meet their climate needs. And overarching strategy, but we've got several programs that feed into that. We have an apprenticeship intermediary program through the Department of Labor, helping get people into apprenticeships, helping people establish apprenticeships, and providing that technical assistance and training. We have the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance, which is a national group of stakeholders and thought leaders coming together to really identify what are the challenges and the best solutions to diversify the workforce. We have a Solar Ready Veterans program working to get veterans into solar. And we've got a lot of other programs that do education and training. We have an empowered program that develops training and technical assistance for code officials and fire officials and some of those other ancillary obstacles that we don't think about to clean energy. So we're really working to provide that technical assistance and that training to remove some of those barriers as we move through. And our future programming will continue to work with local stakeholders and underrepresented communities to remove some of those barriers.
Wow. Okay. So it seems like the work that the IREC does is one area is kind of filling the gaps of places where there's a disconnect that you're trying to fill in, but you also do kind of some direct services to folks who might be looking for clean energy jobs. Is that right? So you kind of both convene and pull people together to address maybe long term the gaps that you see, as well as helping fill them in the meantime.
I like to say that we're the connective tissue between some of these resources and stakeholders. We definitely don't want to reinvent the wheel. The concept is to amplify what's out there. How can we better connect people to the resources that are there? How can we help people build out those resources based on the best practices that we've gleaned from other projects and other partners? What we want to help do is expedite this work. And I think we need to do that by breaking down some of those barriers for some states, and convening and being that facilitator, I think, will help to do that. A lot of people go to workshops or conferences leaving feeling really energized, and that was great, but you go home and you don't really know how to replicate that in your community. It's a recipe that is not known to you. How do I get all these pieces? How do I get these stakeholders together? Like, how do I really leverage these dollars? It can be a difficult thing to do. So getting the right people to the table and really kind of designing what that workforce ecosystem looks like. Every state has workforce development and higher education, and just bring all those folks together to really learn about the clean energy opportunities in a way that we haven't thought of before, and bringing them to the surface. Clean energy opportunities fall under a variety of different occupations and sectors or educational pathways. It can be in construction, it can be in electrical, you can be an electrician, but you could also be a solar panel installer. So it falls under so many different places, and it's not the same everywhere. So how do we highlight that and really amplify what's happening and draw that line to people to say, this impacts clean energy. We need electricians, or we need folks in construction, or we need green buildings, or we need HVAC technicians, and we need to weatherize these homes, and all of these things together impact the work we're trying to do for clean energy, but they're dispersed and oftentimes hidden or embedded in the fabric, and it's not clear. So we want to bring those to the surface and help connect people in that way.
So if I'm I'm looking to get into the clean energy workforce, maybe I'm a young person, or maybe I'm unhappy with my current job, or interested in addressing climate change through my work. Would I go directly to IREC? Is it through your website? What would I do if to find these resources that you provide to connect me with them in my locality?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll drive anybody to our website and get them where they need to be. That's part of some of the services we want to provide through Green Workforce Connect. So really going to that website. And the plan is, as we build this out, there will be, each state will have access to the Green Workforce Connect site. And so you'll type in your zip code and be able to link into these opportunities, but also really do some exploration about what these jobs look like and what they are. Green Workforce Connect isn't just a job board or, a link to external stakeholders. It really will allow the job seeker to come in, explore what these jobs look like, see videos of these jobs and people that are in these jobs. And these sites are built with intentionality. So it's not just a generic site with stock photos. Each of these states had an advisory, panel that came together to say, this is what our demographic looks like. These are the videos that need to represent the communities we're serving. So we really want to be intentional about that. So you'll be able to see the trajectory and pathway of people in these jobs and hear their success stories and how they got started and see how much you're going to earn, how long it takes to train, really find out some of those things that you might be interested in that you might lose on your pathway if you just Google some of these things. We want to make it easier and more streamlined. And so the hope is that you'll come to either IREC or the Green Workforce Connect site and be able to access those tools and those resources to really get people to the right place. So that's the hope, is to really expand that awareness and then streamline the process for them.
And remind me again, what are the 3 states that you're piloting this in?
Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma, and we are now working to roll that out into other states this year. So we'll be adding states as we move through the process, and the hope is that we'll be able to get into all 50 states to connect to the resources that they have, or and also expand to different technologies. So right now it's weatherization, but we really want to expand that to solar and other technologies as we move on.
And the idea being that if let's say the state itself is kind of directs people to the website for that particular area, is it through like career centers? Different, just kind of all the different state agencies that we know of that point people towards jobs that you're coordinating this with?
Yep, we have partnerships with the National Association of Workforce Boards, HBCUs, community college associations, and workforce centers. And so through those national partnerships, we'll be able to leverage those resources in each state. So yeah, that is the hope. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to use what's already there and existing, and really amplify what's happening. So send people to those career centers, and those career centers and community colleges also have a host of resources that folks from underrepresented communities might need to really, start that career pathway or pay for that training. So, those are the resources we want to connect people to, and the employers too in those places. We don't want to send people to just a job board with broken links. We want them to know that there are real employers at the end of this that have a need for these jobs. So we know that like over 80% of employers in our solar census that IREC put out find it difficult to find qualified employees. We know employers are having a struggle to do that, and we also know there's people out there who want to work in this industry. So we want to connect the two seamlessly.
Well, what's the plan? Is it just like state by state? You're going to start rolling it out over the year? Do you have does it just depend on?
It's my favorite phrase, pending the availability of funding. We would love to roll this out. We will be rolling it out for weatherization in multiple states. That's the plan. And we are, thankfully, with funding and support from the Department of Energy, we have this weatherization grant to be able to roll this out for weatherization. But it's a big task to make sure that, we're connected to the right people and we have the right relationships built on the foundation. And like I said before, we don't want to just scrub the internet and say, well, here's colleges, good luck, or here's job board, good luck with that.
Right.
I don't know when the last time you've navigated a job board, but it can be confusing, to know what these requirements are, what is that credential I need, and then have to go on your own journey to try and figure out how to accomplish that. And we work with a lot of great training providers. IREC holds the accreditation for weatherization training providers. It's important to us to make sure that folks are getting, quality training. One of the IREC accredited training providers is Everblue Training, and they're in a bunch of states, and they offer, streamlined training for contractors and for folks coming in who want to work in the clean energy space. And they've been a great partner in these spaces and really work with employers to make sure that they've got the training that's aligned with industry demand. So, making sure that folks have the right resources is going to be key for this rollout. And we're working at all the federal funding that's coming out and how we can work with our partners to leverage this concept. And we'll continue to do programs that feed into this strategy, but we're we're looking for funding to really roll this out for sustainability. If we can create
Right.
this consolidated pathway and resources for folks that is flexible, because clean energy needs are going to change, the labor market's going to ebb and flow. We want to create this flexibility in these partnerships. That's the go-to place to find out what's happening in clean energy. We're going to link to those local resources we talked about for local initiatives. We're going to link to what's happening in regulatory. So with our thumb on the pulse and what's happening in these other places, workforce development can be reactive to that. And we can bring those resources to these communities. So yeah, the plan is to roll this out and really create a hub nationwide, but for each state, to help workforce development strategies in clean energy.
Wow. So one of the things that that I think is part of these resources in the states that IREC does, that I'd like to talk about, are apprenticeships. They were, featured, I think, in IRA when it was released as a big chunk of change that could go towards what are called registered apprenticeships. Could you talk a little bit about apprenticeships, which I don't get a whole lot of attention sometimes, and they seem to me they seem really appealing, or should be very appealing for learners. But where does that fit in with your kind of green Workforce Connect and the work that you do?
Yeah, so those resources we were talking about for employers will be critical to make sure that we can help provide a workforce that keeps them sustainable in the marketplace. And we have developed the ACE network, which is Apprenticeships in Clean Energy. We are, through the Department of Labor and Apprenticeship Intermediary, to help develop registered apprenticeships in clean energy. So apprenticeships are really a proven tool for recruiting and retaining skilled and diverse workers. And we've known that, and organized laborers have some great examples of apprenticeships. But for clean energy folks, we don't always have, a clear pathway to how to start these apprenticeships. We've got smaller contractors who might need some technical assistance. And the interest in apprenticeships is growing fast thanks to these new, incentives, the Inflation Reduction Act. So people are hearing more about it. There's more incentives to do it. But how do you get through all of that, right? How do we build that pipeline of highly qualified and diverse talent using these resources? It can be really complicated to navigate. And so the ACE network has a whole host of partners to help walk through what is a registered apprenticeship. How can we get technical assistance to walk through this, design one? How do we implement one? How do we scale registered apprenticeships that are aligned with the national standards and industry recognized credentials? We want to help people get started to do that. So that information is also on our website. Folks can come and just fill out a form, and someone will contact them at IREC to help them get started from start to finish to create an apprenticeship in their industry, in their area. And that will then connect on Green Workforce Connect to that job seeker site. So when you log in, if there are apprenticeships available in your area, you're going to be provided with the resources and the information to learn about that and how to take advantage of that. But it's really important as we want to roll out a diversified workforce and make sure we've got equity at the forefront of that design. Apprenticeships are a great way to earn and learn while you go in this industry and really create a pathway for a career, right? So you've got mandated pay raises and mandated number of hours that you need to work in the industry. So it really provides that foundation for someone to start a career in clean energy.
I'm a little bit confused about, it seems, we hear a lot about, the growth of quote unquote green jobs and, the need for workers, but like there's this disconnect with apprenticeships. Is it because of the complexity of setting up an apprenticeship? It seems like there's a demand, and it seems like, potential workers would be really interested in, being a part of a program where they get paid, to learn. What is the obstacle? Is there a particular obstacle around clean energy jobs and apprenticeships? Is it just because it's new?
The clean energy sector is fragmented a little bit. So the occupations or the jobs span different sectors. It can be a construction, it can be,
Okay.
in infrastructure. It can be in a multitude of different places. It's not unlike healthcare, which is all healthcare and under one bubble. Clean energy really spans several different sectors or industries. You've got anything electrical or the utilities or electrification, which might be different skill sets than you might need in weatherization, which can fall under construction. It can fall under energy efficiency. You've got HVAC technicians, which fall under a whole nother category, or just laborers. There's laborers in clean energy. So when you look at the skill sets, they're everywhere across a multitude of industries, all which could connect to clean energy. And it's because those lines aren't clear all the time that pathway for apprenticeship isn't always clear. There are also requirements for on-the-job training and related to technical instruction and things that you have to do in terms of the number of hours or the skills that they're learning or what, how that's laid out. That also can be disconnected depending on where you're coming in. So clean energy may fall under part of the job you're doing. And I'll use solar installer as an example. Some employers, that is the prime occupation. That's what you come in, you do. It's a level of occupation. Other places, it's part of your job. You might be a solar installer, but you've got other responsibilities on the construction site or on the job, or maybe you're coming in and just doing one piece of that job. So it looks different in other places. It's not, the standard isn't always the same. And so really piecing together what that looks like and how to develop that apprenticeship can be difficult to navigate because it's not a one-for-one like it might be in other industries. So I think recognizing what we're talking about and defining some of these things is the first step to really make those clear pathways.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you for that, for clarifying that for me. So this podcast really does focus on higher education. What is the role of higher ed in the apprenticeship space? It seems to me, I know that in higher ed there's a real concern about the drop off in enrollment and attracting students to come to college, and it seems like an apprenticeship would help facilitate a wave of students coming in that want to learn and want a career, but it's really appealing to them to actually get paid for the courses oftentimes and for attending class. And so is there a specific interest or a role for higher ed in this that you see as that could maybe be exploited a little bit more by the sector?
Absolutely. I think the trends we're seeing in higher education with people beginning to question the return on that investment, it's a key opportunity to make some changes in higher education, to bring in more experiential learning opportunities and connect to actual real jobs. I think we hear and read an article almost every day about someone who has a 4-year degree but couldn't get a good job or isn't making enough money. And I think we moved so far over the decades to this 4-year degree, and then the assumption was, based on the job market at the time in the 80s and the 90s, you could get out with a degree and get a job. But we didn't make the changes in step with the market and the workforce and the labor movements, and so people are beginning to question that return on the investment. Bringing in this apprenticeship opportunity creates a couple of different pathways. One, for that person coming in who college wasn't for them, can come into a community college or a training program and start that pathway and really see how we can build these stackable credentials, maybe advance to a 2-year degree, maybe advance the pathway to a 4-year degree while building on that work experience. But on the flip side, for someone who's just coming in, let's say you want to be an engineer, there are apprenticeships for engineers, an entry-level job that would pair an aspiring engineer with an experienced engineer to gain that practical field experience. Now you come out with a 4-year degree. You've worked under the supervision of a professional mentor. You've completed tasks. You've done things. You've got responsibilities. You've got on-the-job training. You walk out with a degree plus. And that, I think, is an opportunity for folks to gain a bigger return on that investment. It also connects the 4-year institutions with employers. and making sure that the curriculum, which, may or may not have changed in 2 to 3 to 5 years, is in alignment with what actual employers need. So there's an opportunity to, make those connections and meet the demands of the labor market. Utility companies need people to modernize the grid, to work on interconnection. We need jobs in policy with engineers, with analysts and project managers, which require a higher level of maybe some education and training. This is a good pathway to mix the two and really give an opportunity for these students to come out with a little bit more than just a degree.
So if I understand apprenticeships, they are fairly, or can be complex, as you said, there is typically a learning component to the apprenticeship. Is that the main role colleges and typically play? I think it's usually community colleges, in my understanding. But is that the role that they typically play in the apprenticeship program?
Yeah, there are requirements for a registered apprenticeship to have a certain number of hours that you're working, making sure that you've got a certain level of experience, making sure that your pay rate is where it needs to be. So there's those regulatory, hoops that one has to jump through to have a registered apprenticeship is critical to making sure that student gets practical learning experience, but also that classroom learning experience. So it's a blend of the two. So you're not just going to work every day, working on your job and, getting paid, a wage for that. There is a learning component and meeting milestones to that. So that's the design is really twofold, and it's a great opportunity for folks to earn while they learn. So for these underrepresented communities who need a paycheck, it's a great opportunity to really have a wage come in, but get that learning and on the side as well as that experience on the job.
Do they pay for the learning piece, or is that covered by the?
There are wage requirements, which I don't have off the top of my head. I know my IREC staff on the ACE network would know exactly what those pay requirements are, but yes, there has to be a certain wage, and then there's also built in
I meant
a
that
wage
for the learning piece. So they, when they're in a class at a community college, for example, is that tuition covered, or do they have to pay for it?
That design, I think, depends on, how the employer is setting that up and what's available and who's sponsoring the apprenticeship. So community college, it's not always sponsored by an employer. A community college can sponsor apprenticeships.
Okay.
Other entities can sponsor apprenticeships. So it depends on who's sponsoring and how those things are set up for the student. But it should be no cost to come in for the student and earn while they learn, ideally. And, connecting with those organizations that we're trying to do with Green Workforce Connect, we want to make sure that, because there are other barriers, even if you have an apprenticeship, you still might have other barriers to employment or education and training. And so partnering with those community-based organizations to help provide those supportive services or those wraparound services will be key.
Is there can you think of a college that does this particularly well, or, has a kind of a solid history of really taking advantage of apprenticeships and as a big piece of kind of what they do?
I think that there are probably a lot of colleges around the country who are doing this well, and I wish I had a comprehensive list. That's part of what we're trying to do with Green Workforce Connect, is come up with that repository of places that are doing it really well. I know that there are colleges in New York who've got some great programs. I am in Virginia, so would be remiss if I didn't say that the Virginia Community College System does a great job of doing sector strategy approach design. They're really embedded with the workforce system here. The colleges all take a sector strategy approach. We have fantastic options in Virginia for learners to come in and get free workforce development training or in-demand training to earn credentials. And they've done a great job creating that pathway to stack those credentials and continue that career pathway through offering credit for prior learning. And I know they've got apprenticeship coordination for just about every industry in Virginia. And I know clean energy is really making some strides in Virginia as well. But there are quite a few colleges across the country who've got great partnerships with employers. I know Washington, D.C. has a great training program for infrastructure. They have an infrastructure academy in D.C. and Virginia does as well. But, the employers sponsor the program. The students don't have to pay for the training, and
Right.
they automatically have an apprenticeship with the utility company.
Another thing that I guess a focus area of yours at IREC is the what you call the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance. Can you talk a little bit about that alliance and kind of what the goals of that are?
Yeah, the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance came about a couple of years ago in connection with the Community College Workforce Association, and really came together to pull stakeholders. I think there's over 500 folks to talk about what we needed. What were the key recommendations to creating a diverse workforce in clean energy? We know we've got these ambitious goals to meet in clean energy. We know we have to work together, but how could we come to a place and identify where we were stuck, where we needed to put our focus and energy, what was working well, what wasn't, sort of a gap analysis, if you will. We reported out a year ago the key recommendations for diversifying the clean energy workforce, what tools were available, but we really wanted to become a place where we could provide at IREC the technical assistance and the connection to folks for expediting some of these solutions. And so this year we focused on how to operationalize those solutions. It's one thing to put in a PDF what they are. It's another to help people put them to practical use. And so we've been working to provide technical assistance through our webinar series of how to leverage partnerships, how to access the resources through the federal funding and the IRA, and how to navigate that, how to start apprenticeships. What we plan to do moving forward is to, now that we've got this national approach, take it one step further, continue with that work, but narrow it down to a regional approach so that we can get more nuanced and in the weeds and really bring together stakeholders from similar regions to be able to share this work. We've had small contractors call me and say, I need curriculum for something, or I need these resources, or how do we find faculty? So we want to break this down on a more nuanced level, create a regional partnership for folks and really allow them a more interactive space to build out and amplify the work that's being done. And so we can work with one another and build off that work and replicate some of these success stories in places. And so that's the goal for 2024, is to really design now a regionalized approach to provide even more directed technical assistance to these localities. And I think with our other programs at IREC, it's a nice alignment with the work we're doing there. But we still want to become...
It sounds like that kind of informed, or, sounds to me like it informed the Green Workforce Connect. That it was almost kind of like a way of kind of building out that kind of foundation for building the.
Yep,
network.
It did. That diversity and equity piece goes beyond just making sure that your workforce has diverse workers. We're talking about bringing equity to clean energy to communities that have typically not, had that opportunity or those advantages. We're working on some projects in New Orleans, for example, where the homes are in such dire need of weatherization. So these are some of the poorest people in the state, and their utility bills are probably through the roof because their homes aren't weatherized or up to date. And so, we're just perpetuating that cycle of poverty for folks who are already hard hit in these areas. How do we bring equity to clean energy to these places, and how can we do that through workforce development? And I think by diversifying the workforce, we will build trust in those communities and allow some of these programs to flourish and really bring clean energy to folks who would never have the opportunity to do that. And that's what those federal programs are there for. The Weatherization Assistance Program is there to provide these services to these folks. So we really need people, in the workforce to go execute that, or that program won't be as successful as it could be. So that diversity piece is sort of twofold, and at the foundation of Green Workforce Connect as well.
Yeah. So I want to, we touched upon this kind of at the top of the episode a little bit, but heard a lot about the work that IREC does, and it sounds to me that you're both working with the, well, for lack of a better term, the workforce training system in the U.S., as well as almost, also trying to work outside it to kind of fill in the gaps. Can you talk a little bit about what workforce writ large in the U.S. looks like for maybe folks who aren't as familiar? When we talk about workforce, certainly there is, we're talking about higher ed, but it's bigger than that. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what that looks like here in the United States?
Yeah, each state takes sort of a different approach to workforce development in terms of the departments that run it or where the resources lie from Department of Labor and other federal organizations. So the ecosystem might look different in each state, but it really comes down to finding the career awareness and resources for people who want to work, connecting them to the training that is required to do that work, and making sure that that training meets the demand of the employers who are hiring. So those are sort of the three pieces to that puzzle. And there are a variety of different resources and ways that that's executed across the country. Some places have workforce development embedded in their community colleges system. Some places have workforce development that stands alone. There are career centers and other Department of Labor funded resources in each state that folks can go to get resources and help with finding a job and a career, and really connecting them to the resources they need to execute that. So the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, or WIOA, has several different titles under it. Some help adult education and learning. Some work specifically with workforce development in those career centers. Some work with, credentialing training. So those dollars are dispersed in a variety of different ways, but each state has those resources to essentially help job seekers connect to the right training and get the skills that they need to get jobs and become employed.
So, with this, I guess, state by state structure, just hearing about all the challenging work that IREC is taking on, and also your partners with really kind of meeting the needs to build this clean energy workforce, it seems like there's a huge demand put upon kind of broadly kind of U.S. workforce training. Is what I hear, or maybe what I'm inferring from some of the things that you've described in the work that you do, is kind of helping to build out a more coordinated, collaborative workforce system, at least as in regards to clean energy. But it seems like it would benefit workforce generally as well. Is it up to the task of kind of the meeting the kind of the needs that we have for clean energy at the kind of the timeline that we have for doing it? Does there need to be some fundamental shifts? And is that primarily kind of what you guys are trying to do at IREC?
Yeah, I think workforce development in a lot of states they've got solid systems. I don't know that the system necessarily is broken in any way. I think the issue is that clean energy is so distributed in the fabric of employment that it's not just a direct line. And I think helping workforce development folks in each state really identify and amplify these are the links to clean energy. Here's the pathway to the jobs that we need to reach our clean energy goals. That's what needs to be amplified, because like I said, those jobs fall under construction. They fall under a variety of different occupations, but also those job seekers walking into a career center might not know or think that they can even do those jobs because we don't know what those jobs are. So defining those careers and those occupations and really bringing that to light for these career centers. I feel like the people who work in workforce development are, some of the hardest working people in the country providing public service to folks. And there's no possible way they could know the nuances of every job sector that they're trying to feed into their community. And so making sure that employers have the resources they need to amplify, the jobs they're looking for, and then making it easier, making it easier to utilize the programs that are already there and really highlight the work that we need to get done in clean energy. is the goal there. So really it's to connect to the great work that's already happening, but bring clean energy to the forefront.
That makes sense. I guess in as you said earlier, your kind of role in really helping make sense of what these jobs are and what they require and that how the workforces might adapt to kind of this new characterization of clean energy jobs. Is there something that colleges and universities can do or do better, or ways that these institutions could better support some of the work that you're doing to build the clean energy workforce?
I think making sure that colleges and universities have a seat at the table is the first step that needs to happen in all of these designs. And sometimes they're there because, like I said, some of these workforce designs are great and they're working well. I think making sure that other people understand how to work with organized labor. What does that mean in my state? If I'm a right to work state, really, who are all the people that need to be at the table, and how does higher ed play a role? I think working to make sure that they have access to the most up-to-date and relevant curriculum, which can also be an obstacle for higher education or community colleges to have to create curriculum. We've got some great resources at the Alliance and connections to folks who've got some outstanding curriculum already developed. How can we, remove some of those barriers for higher education or community colleges? That would be the goal, making sure that they're at the table and they have a voice, because they're a key piece to education and training and career pathways, and they've got a lot of resources that they can provide. So I think making sure that they're there in that design is the first key step, and then hearing what their gaps are. What are their needs? For this project we're doing in New Orleans, they've got a great community college, but it doesn't have all of the training that it might need to meet the climate resilience, employment needs of New Orleans. So how can we find out what those needs are from employers? How can we do that gap analysis and maybe help that community college start up a program or replicate a program from another state? So really making sure that we're meeting the needs of both the students and the employers, and being that intermediary, I think, will be a key role for us.
Got it. And I probably should have asked this before, but do you provide these services mostly through kind of the grant funding that you get, or do any of the organizations or partners you work with, do you charge them? Do they pay for this, or is it a service that you provide from external funding?
Green Workforce Connect will all be funded through donations, grants, philanthropic contributions, and support from our partners. We don't believe that there should be a cost for job seekers. There are plenty of federal resources out there in these states that we can connect to for job seekers and employers. And so we're looking to fund Green Workforce Connect in that way, to be able to leverage the resources that already exist. But our role is to provide that technical assistance for both employers, training providers, and job seekers. And so we want to continue to find funding that would allow us to provide that support with the resources that our partners have and resources that we bring to the table.
Got it. So it's oftentimes a combination of grants that they've secured as well as funding that you put together to provide these services. Yeah.
So we're going to be leveraging our partners' resources, and we'll write into the grant for the things that we need. But we want to expand on what's happening and not just continue to replicate things that have already been done. So I think the way to expand is to leverage the resources that are out there, either from IREC or our partners, and build a program design for grant funding that will really, build on that and take us a little further in moving that needle towards the adoption of clean energy.
Well, finally, Cindy, I want to ask, what is your outlook? You're down on the ground, you're working on this very, complex array of workforce training and accreditation and offering courses and partnerships and alliances. Is it working? Do you feel hopeful about the future and being able to kind of accomplish the immense challenge of building this, clean energy workforce in time, right, to meet these urgent climate goals. What is your feeling on the ground about that?
I have not worked in a place where I've seen so much coordinated effort before across so many different resources. The Department of Labor, the Department of Energy, the Department of Commerce. There are so many federal programs right now geared toward workforce development, but specifically clean energy in some way. And we've got a lot of federal support and momentum. It's really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with all of these resources coming together. That brings me a whole lot of hope. The conversations are being had. People are recognizing that there's opportunity here for work, for great careers that earn a family-sustaining wage, but also in turn will have a huge impact on our climate goals. And so I think keeping the conversation going and bringing as many people into that discussion as possible is what IREC has done a really great job at doing and being a thought leader in this space. And so I'm really optimistic that these resources and leveraging these different opportunities is going to create a great workforce development strategy, but really also help get us where we need to be with our climate goals.
Well, that is a great great positive note to end on. Thank you, Dr. Cynthia Finley, for being on climate.edu today. Really appreciate your time, and I learned a lot.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the opportunity.
Climate.edu is written by me, Richard Sebastian. The theme music is by Serge Quadrado. You'll find a link to Serge's free music archive page in the show notes, where you can also find a guest bio, transcripts, and additional links and resources. You can also go to the show website at climate.edu.com. Yes, that's right. The word climate, DOTEDU.com, where you'll find other episodes of climate.edu, get news and updates related to climate change in higher ed, or to get in touch with me. If you like this episode, make my day by subscribing. Thanks for listening. See you next time.